All right, hey folks. Today is April 14th, 2025. I'm Chris Lucas. This is my show, The Protestant View. For now, like I said, I might change the name soon. Anyway, I have a link pinned up there for anyone who wants to join and have an open discussion about Passover or Daniel's 70th week. Um, as far as who's the he in Daniel 9:27, because it seems like I have a lot of hatred lately because I saw some people unsubscribe and they get mad, but they're not substantiating why they're getting mad. They're just like, hey, I'm upset. Bye. I'll never listen to your show again. And it's like, okay, basically, when I do these shows, I'm trying to show you an argument that this is why I'm seeing something this way. I'm willing to discuss it. And the whole point of this is to try to create unity, because we cannot have unity if we're lying about things, right? We cannot have unity if what we're basing our beliefs on is a lie, because someone's going to want truth, or what stops someone else from making up their own lie and having more division. So when people want to be so divisive, I want to understand, why are you getting so angry? Now, if you just want to believe your own lie, that's fine, but why are you getting so divisive about it? You know? And I feel like I'm substantiating an argument here. Uh it's like, and I'm really sorry if it offended some people. Well, actually, I'm not. I mean, I don't understand why, if I bring up the contradictions of the Roman Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, and I hear so many so called Protestants having these hour-long shows where they're just discussing this for hours and hours and hours a week. And here I go. I come up with a very simple argument. Hey, this looks like it destroys apostolic authority when we look at Passover, because look at them contradicting the church fathers. How can you venerate Polycarp and then you're going to take and also promote and venerate all these other so-called church fathers that would excommunicate Polycarp, that call him someone that has practices deceitful practices, or observes deceitful practices and teaches deceitful practices because he's a Judaizer, right? And they call him an evil Judaizer. And I can even walk into some Protestant churches today. I can walk into Orthodox churches. I can walk into Roman Catholic churches, and if I start talking about, hey, let's keep Passover or something, or I observe Passover, and I'm teaching others how to do it, they will go, you Judaizer, you evil Judaizer, you want to blah, 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 all this stuff, put people under the law. And it's like, well, no, I see the Apostle Paul doing it. I see all the early Christians doing it. I see Jesus doing it. I don't see them keeping Easter, okay? Now, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm just saying that before you just get, I'm just pointing out the absurdity of you running someone like me out of your church, or blocking me when I go to your live streams and I bring this up and I'm asking a question like, oh, this looks so weird that you want to take and call Polycarp a church father, venerate him, and then you're going to have these other people that are venerated, and you call them church fathers, and yet they would kick him out of the church. And then some of you get mad and go, oh, we wouldn't kick Polycarp out. Well, and then I'm like, well, can you just explain this for me? I just would like you to explain how your church can venerate Polycarp and venerate these other guys that say he should be driven out of the church for teaching deceitful practices. I mean, that's all I'm saying. It's like, and I don't know why was this topic, when I brought this particular topic up, why was this the topic that just made you guys lose your minds and unsubscribe? And I have not seen any comments where you're like, oh, you were wrong, here's where you're wrong, here's why we can venerate Polycarp, and it still makes sense that we're also venerating the people that are calling him someone who practices deceitful practices. And then some of you guys, like I said, you didn't like me saying that. Oh, we never claim that he practices deceitful practices. Chris Ustum never said that he practices deceitful practices. And I'm like, well, let's just Look at it. Look at a statement. He says, anyone who does these kinds of things are practicing deceitful practices of the Jews. And now we see Polycarp learning this from the apostles. So obviously the apostles and Polycarp would be doing this. So obviously John Chrysostom is saying that they're doing these things, and so are all these other church fathers, right? They're all accusing Polycarp and the apostles of doing the same things. So I'm just like, I just want that to make sense to me. And then someone got mad because I posted that I viewed dispensationalist in the same light as cultist. Okay, why shouldn't I? I mean, if they're going to twist the Bible every bit as bad as a Seventh-day Adventist, why can I not put them in the same thing? I guess because they don't have this one leader or whatever. So I guess maybe that would be the one thing, because they don't have their own prophet that they say is like their divine interpreter of scripture. And okay, so maybe dispensationalists don't quite have that. But I have a problem when people, hold a view and they can't substantiate it. Like, I had this person on my show. Let me kind of bring this one thing up. Because I'm going to find a show I did. And this is just one of several dispensationalists I had on my show, right? So you guys can see that I'm sitting here, and before you get mad at me, who has put so much effort and time into trying to give you guys a chance to explain your ideals, but you get mad at me, but I'm the one that looks like I put so much of my time into this, and you guys just give me the runaround. I had this guy named Underground Publishing on my show, just to let people know. But you can see here I'm actually talking to a dispensationalist author, right? I'm giving you guys hours to just just simply explain this to me. Oh my gosh, really? I don't have sound? You gotta be kidding me. Do I not have sound? I'm just gonna keep doing my show because sometimes people claim I don't have sound. And if anyone else is watching, because I'm wondering why Kai Ma didn't say I was muted, because you're saying I'm muted and I don't have sound. But I've had people like click on a YouTube and I'm not muted. So, and I have my mic set up the exact same way I was set up. So, if I am muted, someone let me know. I'm just going to keep doing my show, and you know what? Here, I'll go check it, because I should be able to hear myself talk. Oh, man. Sorry about this, folks. Alright, hey everybody, my name's Chris Lucas. This is my show, The Protestant View. No, that's not it. Today. Shoot. Sorry about this. I gotta make sure I got sound, though. Shoot. Yep, I got sound, so... because I just now checked it, so I do got sound. But anyway, so I did this show with a futurist. It goes by Underground Publishing, Aaron, right? And I'm not gonna play this video, but there's a couple of times when I was asking him about how he comes about his dates, and basically he winds up telling me that I don't even know if he had a starting point. When I was discussing this video with him, he seemed not to know the dates. And then which I kind of found odd. It's like, how do you know this prophecy came true if you're not even sure of the dates? Because one thing I know is I know about the Babylonian astronomical tablets. I know about the Elephantine papyri, the Greek synchronizations, and the Persian regnal dating methods. Right. So it's like, so I understand how they go about dating this archaeology and everything like that. So I understand, like, they got these dates down pretty well, as far as when Artaxerxes was in his 7th year, when Artaxerxes was in his 20th year, what year Cyrus freed the Jews, which was around 539 BC, October. So I know all these things because I'm writing a book. I'm trying to have conversations with people about this. And how can I say this prophecy came true if I don't know the date? How do you know it was 70 weeks? 77s, which is actually uh, uh, 70 Shavuos, and a Shavua is a 7-year period of time in Jewish um, culture, right? That's what that word means, Shavua. If it's a Shavua of days, they'll add the word yom to it, yom, or yamim, which is the plural of yamim. So they'll say it's a Shavua of yamim, like they do in Daniel 10, verse 4, right? Or is it verse 3? It's verse 3 or 4, where Daniel says he was fasting for 3 Shavua of days, but he adds the word days. So when we see this context and we know Shavua can be used for years, there's no reason to assume it's just days, right? Especially when Daniel, in the very next chapter, when he uses Shavua and he means a week of days, a 7-day period, he adds the word Yamim to it, right? So, um, anyway, so when I'm talking to Aaron, he goes, "Oh, well, the Jews use a 360-day prophetic year." And I'm like, "Well, where is this 360-day prophetic year?" And he goes, now I don't remember exactly what part, but he goes, "All I'm doing is taking John's count for a 7-year period, using 360-day years, and going, okay, if John is using that to present the 70th week of Daniel, then why can't I make them all 360-day years?" But see, that's a lot of assertion, right? Because it's like, you're asserting that just because in Revelation it says 1,260, you're assuming that that must mean 1,260 days. That we're to divide that up into 3.5 and come up with 360-day years. But that's an assumption. I mean, what if should we do the same in Daniel chapter 11, where we see the words 1,290 days and go, "Oh, that must be a year. Let's divide that up into 3.5." Or, and I know they use the words times, and half a time, and all that, but you're still just asserting things on the text that were never defined. And one thing I want you to think about is when you write a contract, you have to use the words at the time the contract was written. So I cannot sit here and write a contract, have you sign it, and then later on I'm making different demands, and I'm like, "Well, you signed the contract," and you're like, "Yeah," but here I am changing the language in the contract, changing what time means in the contract and all this. Can I do that after you sign the contract? All these things must be done before the contract. So whatever the words meant at the time this contract's written, that's what the words have to mean in the contract. You can't change the meaning of the words after someone signs a contract. And so what I'm asking anyone is, what did the Jews know about a year prior to this prophecy being given? And all we can do is look in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14 through 16, and see that God defines a year by the lights in the sky. Well, we know that the year has two equinox periods, one in the spring, one in the fall. We know that after, Noah gets off the boat, that he's now to start counting the first month of the year being Nicene or Nisan. Some people will call it Aviv. Same thing, means the exact same thing. In the Akkadian language, Nicene means budding, right? Which is the same thing Aviv means, right? Same exact thing. And I had people that blocked me and kicked me off a channel just because they said you should not dare use the Babylonian name. How dare you use that in our chat room? And they got mad and furious at me. And it's like this kind of stuff is just driving me crazy, because it's like, well, you ignorant people, if you would just go look at the language, you would see that in Akkadian language it means the same thing. So the Jews are not doing anything demonic by using Babylonian names. They're not being corrupt. They're not doing anything. It means the same thing in Akkadian language. So just because they're adopting the common names of the people that they're living around, and there's absolutely no pagan associations with it. I mean, why is it so evil for me to use the month Nisan, or why is it evil for them? It means the exact same thing as Aviv. So I don't know what people's deal is, but anyway. So we know that there's the equinox divides a year into halves, right? So if the first month of the year is supposed to be in spring, we know it's got to come after the equinox, right? And so any month that comes before that equinox period, that's going to be part of that prior year, because that equinox is the dividing of the year. That's when it starts to become equal parts of day and night, right? And that's what God used to divide the year. That's why he says he gives us the sun and the moon for the years and the days, right? And the moon is for the months, right? So that's even where the word month comes from. It was originally moon, right? And so it's like, what moon is it? Well, it's the first moon or the second moon or the third moon of the year. And, it's still part of that year if it comes before that equinox, because basically that year gave birth to that moon, as a way of looking at it, right? So if it was created before that equinox, it's still part of that same year that all those other moons are. So and if it's not, then where a year's either got 13 months, or that's the first month of the new year if it comes after that equinox. It's a pretty simple calendar, and that's what the Jews use. That when you go through all the records and everything, that's the calendar they use. So where are you getting this 360-day prophetic year? How would Daniel know it? Show me the chapter and verse. And no one can do it, because you know what? It doesn't exist. But people want to get divisive and say, oh no, I insist. Why do you insist? Can you show me? Don't go to Revelation, because Revelation was written way after the fact. Go to, we know a contract has to maintain the same meaning and language as the time it was written in. So show me then. How would Daniel know what you're talking about? Because if that's the case, God can be dishonest and change what a year means after the fact. But God doesn't need to do that. So I don't know, like, why people want to hold God to a lesser standard than man. Um, so if in the Bible 120 years is the limit of human life, isn't it supposed to divide it from 2025 years? Well, I don't think 120 years is the limit of life of a human. I think that's like a misinterpretation of the scripture, because in the scripture, um, Noah says, no, God says to Noah, it will be 120 years. Man has like 120 years. It was 120 years from the day God gave that prophecy to Noah until the flood. Because you can see that after the flood, people were still living past 120 years. And he said, aren't we the 16.875 generation of humanity? Well, you might be from a foreign country, so it could be that you're saying 16,875. I'm not really sure what you mean by that. But all I know is a generation's typically about 40 years in the Bible. Because that's why when Jesus gave that prophecy in Daniel, or not Daniel, but in Matthew 24, he says this generation, what it will see, or this generation will not pass until all these things happen. A 40-year period of time with all those people that are witnessing it, and that's what they saw within that 40-year period of time was tribulation. And folks know I'm not a full preterist. I'm just saying that I believe that part of the Bible has been fulfilled. You know what? I'll actually open it up to talk about anything. Yeah, the 20 years is bogus because many live longer than 120 years after the flood. Yeah, that 120 years misconception is bogus. And many people lived after the flood longer than 120 years. Yeah. But hey, you know what? The floor is open for anyone who wants to come on the show. I'm just kind of pointing out that I have been pretty fair with futurists and allowing them to come on. I've even offered to come on their shows and have them walk me through Daniel's prophecy and show me why they even come up with the dates they come up with and everything. Like, because when I'm approaching this, I have no idea why people wouldn't. Because I'm gonna bring up a picture that should be kind of easy to understand. Um, I was just looking at this right before I did my show too. Oh, that's frustrating. Because I thought I had this stuff all laid out. Pretty sure I'm sorry about this. Because I mean, I could have swore I was staring right at it right before I did my show. Oh, anyway, I don't know what happened to it. Because I was staring at it right before I started the show. But there's 4 decrees. One in people try to say Cyrus decree, but if you look at the whole thing about Daniel chapter 9, I should just keep that screen up because we'll go to Daniel chapter 9 real quick because the first verse of it tells you it can't be Cyrus's decree, and then this blows me away when people try to say Cyrus's decree. Because so Cyrus had already released the Jews. So, and this is the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, the seed of the Medes, which was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. And Daniel in his reign, understood by the books of the numbers of years, whereof the words of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. So, but right here we're seeing that he's already released. So why would you start a prophecy that, I mean, to me, I wouldn't use the decree by Cyrus because Cyrus has already released them. So now it says, know therefore and understand So 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and thy holy city to finish the transgressions and everything else. But let me get down to 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, 62 weeks, and the street shall be built again, and the wall even on the troublous times. So what it's saying is there's going to be 483 years from this decree, this commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem. Was Jerusalem restored and rebuilt under Cyrus? You had a 49-year period there. A lot of them like to say, oh, well, that's where the first 49 years start, or the first 7 weeks start, and then it breaks, and then there's then they start up another, 434 years till Messiah. Problem is, you don't see where the next 434 years would start according to this prophecy. It's just telling us this whole thing starts at this decree to restore and build Jerusalem. And it's restored because the law's restored, the Jerusalem's starting to be built, and this is all happening under Artaxerxes in his 7th year. That's when this is starting to be built. And that's the decree that's beginning this whole thing. And that's why. So I don't even know why people even try to use Cyrus. And then it's like, well, if you try to go by the simple problem with the 444 decree or 445, whatever year they want to argue for, if you add 483 years to it, you go into 40 AD. Well, we know Messiah was already crucified way before then, right? Around 30, 31, 33 AD. I argue it can't be 33 AD, just based off this prophecy and archaeology alone. But so that's just where I got my issues with that. And that's pretty simple. All I'm doing is adding 490 years to 457 BC, which seems to be like the decree that restores and rebuilds Jerusalem when you read Ezra chapter 7. That's the only, we have a whole chapter almost devoted towards a single decree. There's nothing like that in the rest of the Bible. So maybe that's like the important decree. And since we actually see the laws being restored, the worship being restored, the people actually coming back into the land, because the people weren't all in that land. A lot of them were still in Babylon. That decree is what started all the funding and everything to bring those people back. And they started restoring Jerusalem. They restored the laws. They were restoring the priesthood. There's so many major things that happened within that 49-year period between 457 to about, what was it, like 404 BC. Like all these like major accomplishments going on and happening. So I don't understand why that's so hard to say that's not the decree, especially when you see 483 years later, around 27 AD, there's a lot of good biblical and archaeological evidence that's when Jesus appeared on the scene, right? So that would fit the know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. That's 483 years. That's 27 AD. Oh, guess what? We do start seeing this figure, Jesus, appear, right? This Messiah appear. And then when you look at it, it says after 62 weeks. So it's basically telling you after the whole the way it's written, people get kind of confused because they're like, well, why is it just talking about the 62 weeks and not saying the 7 weeks also? And it's kind of like where it's like going back into details, because it's like, I'm going to give you this whole period up until you see Messiah the Prince. And then it's starting back over and it's kind of going over it again, where it's like talking about the focus on the 62 weeks. Because basically the focus in verse 25 was on the restoring and rebuilding Jerusalem. So then it's kind of like I don't know exactly what kind of speech you call this. or writing, you call it. But it's just basically where all they're doing is just kind of going back and going into more detail. And so it's like after the 62 weeks, Messiah is cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince who shall come and destroy this, and the people of the prince that shall come and destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and the end of war, desolations are determined. Some of this translation I kind of disagree with, but anyway, for the gist, for the most of it, you see that Messiah is cut off, and so now it's just going to go into more detail. So now it's talking about after that 62 weeks, right? So this is the part down here in verse 27, after that 62 weeks. So what do we see? We do see Messiah, who confirms a covenant, but this is not telling you, oh, it's only for 1 week, right? Because this word here in the Hebrew, this word's not in the text. For it's just he shall confirm a covenant with many 1 week. So it's just like in 1 week, the 1 week that's left, he will confirm a covenant with many. And in the midst of that week, or it should say in the middle of that week, he will cause sacrifice and oblation to cease, because that word in Hebrew means middle. It's more precise than just saying in the midst. It's actually more like middle of the week. He shall cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. So, or to rest, to come to a rest, right? So if he's causing sacrifice and oblation to come to rest, I mean, that's what we see when Jesus died. I mean, why does everyone say we don't still perform sacrifices today? Because of what he did on the cross. And then some people will be like, but they were still sacrificing animals even after he got crucified. They were sacrificing them up till 70 AD. But again, you're not reading this correctly. He shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease, to come to a rest. Did his sacrifice on the cross eventually do that? Yes, that's why it did wind up coming to a rest. It wound up like we don't need it anymore. It doesn't say it's going to immediately stop as soon as he gets crucified. It just says it will cause sacrifice and oblation to cease, because it made it obsolete, unnecessary. That's all this is saying. You don't have to read more into it. But some people like to say, oh no, that means an Antichrist is going to break a peace treaty. Well, even the words, like for covenant and stuff, like this word is only used, in like holy covenants. Godly covenants, like you never see this used as far as like someone that's like an antichrist or someone doing something evil. Though, like this Hebrew word right here, oh man, let me Daniel 9 interlinear, because what I'd like to do is have some future, someone that still is pushing back. If you started watching my show just now, please come on, click the link, because I just like you to walk me through it. But see, we're seeing this word Berit, and I'm pretty sure this is always used for a covenant between God and his people. See, I made a covenant with Abraham. Just everlasting covenant, everlasting Berit, right? And this is Genesis 9:13, Genesis 9:16, Genesis 15:18. It's just like this word's almost always used for a godly covenant. See, again, thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor with their gods, for a perpetual covenant. Behold, I make a covenant for all thy people. This is just me reading through here and trying to find the first instance of where we can argue where it's like, where you can say that, oh no, this does not mean like a covenant with, this means like it can be used for an antichrist. But I mean, I don't see it. Now, if someone else sees it in the future, leave it in the video. Maybe I'm just overlooking it. But I keep seeing, nevertheless, the Ark of the Covenant with the Lord. Forever, it is a covenant, like like all these words without me reading the passage. This looks to me like this is always like some kind of holy covenant. So, like, Brit is always used in that manner. So why would I just suddenly just go, oh man, I'm gonna force the Antichrist interpretation? Well, first of all, if we just count years as normal, in a normal, coherent way, I mean, you just add that to 457 BC, you come up to 34 AD. That's your 490 years. You take that last 7 years, you see that yeah, there was this person that died on a cross that in that death eventually caused sacrifice and oblation to cease. And someone would be, but you just said eventually caused. The text doesn't say eventually caused. Look, it says in the midst, he shall cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. So it means it's going to eventually come to a rest. That's all it means. It doesn't mean it has to stop immediately right there. Boom. It just says this is what's going to cause it to cease. That's all it's saying. And when we see that, um, and we also see things like, okay, that looks like it's a very natural timeline to use, right? We don't see any proof of Jews using a 360-day year and the whole and the Bible and the Old Testament, and all you can do is use Old Testament to to figure these things out, because you can't change the meaning of words after they're written. God is more honest than a man, so we're not going to say, oh no, but God's dishonest. No, we're not going to do that. So we're going to say that you're not going to force your interpretation, especially when you see words like covenant. They're almost like every single time I'm looking at this word, Berit, in Hebrew, it's always about a holy covenant. It's never used for an antichrist. So why are you going to now take and you're going to use some crazy 360-day year that we don't see? You're then going to say, nope, I know this word covenant's normally about this Hebrew word berit. It almost is always about a godly covenant, but I'm going to make it about the antichrist. See, do you start to see how much you have to start inserting and forcing? It's almost like you're determined to twist the scripture, like you just don't care. Because the natural thing would be to, for me, it just seems like it's just a logical thing to take 457, add these years, and go, oh, okay, all this meets. But then later on, if you're studying it and you're like, well, now I'm starting to see all these issues, I can't do that. Explain to me why. And I have not seen someone go, oh, these are such big issues, and this is why I had to give up that view that Jesus fulfilled this, and this is why I think it's an antichrist. Because okay, you cannot even explain to me where you get your 360-day calendar. You cannot explain to me why you're breaking this prophecy up into three parts if you're trying to use Cyrus. You also can't explain to me why Cyrus, if he's supposed to restore and build Jerusalem, and that was actually the decree, why didn't it get restored and rebuilt with him? And I actually argue that those words for Cyrus just means cause to build. It doesn't even mean that he's actually going to be the one who rebuilds it, like in Isaiah. That wording there, I think that's more like cause to build. But anyway, but then you got to also think about when this prophecy was given, the Jews were already released. And so, and to me, this sounds like when you're reading verse 25, know that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem. Well, from the going forth, I mean, it's, maybe I'm misreading the Hebrew and misreading the English, but this to me doesn't sound like, no, therefore that from the decree that's already occurred to the to Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, right? 7 weeks and 2 weeks, right? Like, I don't see that. It looks like from the going forth, like it's a future decree that hasn't happened yet. So we know the Cyrus already released the Jews. So I'm not gonna use Cyrus, because to me, this whole from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem, that sounds to me like it's a future decree, a future command of another king. One other thing that I was looking at too was, the futures want to keep insisting that this prince that shall come as an antichrist. And again, you see this word. Now, I understand negid is used for prince right here. It normally means a appointed leader by God. I don't think the antichrist is an appointed leader by God. And I know that I think someone pointed out one or two passages where negid is not used that way. And I still have to look into that. I haven't got a chance to really study that closely. But let's just say, okay, maybe negid can be used a couple of different ways. But since it's normally used that way, I mean, I'd be like less likely to demand that's antichrist, especially when all these dates match up. But let's look at something else that they keep paying no attention of. The prince that shall come. Okay, what I want you to think about is, what was this prophecy about? 70 weeks are determined upon thy people to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Nothing about an antichrist. So it sounds like this is about this most holy that is to come, or this Messiah that is to come, because especially when you read verse 25, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Negid, the prince, shall be 7 weeks. So the only Negid we see mentioned in this entire chapter is this prince in verse 25, Messiah the prince. So this is the prince who is to come, right? Since it's because you're talking about it's going to be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So it's going to be 483 years until who comes? Messiah the Prince. So this would be the coming prince, right? Because it's saying it's going to take 483 years to come. This text only referred to one coming prince. And the one prince to come is the Messiah. So why would I suddenly think this is about an antichrist when it says prince that shall come? The verse before it was talking about the prince that should come being the Messiah. Why am I suddenly going to jump to this verse when I see the word Negid and I see up here Messiah the Negid, or Mashiach the Negid, if you want to talk about the Hebrew? Why am I suddenly going to jump and say, oh, this prince must be talking about an antichrist, when I think that they would probably use the word Sar, the Hebrew word Sar, which also means leader, but it doesn't mean godly appointed leader, right? Now, also here, and the people of the prince that shall come. I would say this has to be the Jews, because in the Hebrew it's Am, and I know there's some argument there. I had a show with a friend that's a Jew who speaks fluent Hebrew. He's got a different interpretation, but since this is saying the people of the prince that shall come, this prince that shall come, to me, it logically is pointing there back to this Messiah. And the people, since that's Am, normally I would think it's Goy, but you would use Goy if it's not the Jews. And I know there's some argument there, but I don't know of a time when just like a generic group of people is called Am. Like normally it's like it would be like it would be like a specific group with a specific culture and everything, a specific religion, and all of that. Then you would use the word Am in a few instances. But normally it's almost always Am. The highest percentage of time it's always referring back to the Jews. Now I'm not saying Am is always used that way, but when it's up here, you see 70 weeks are determined upon thy people. This word's also Am, and I would think the people of the prince have to be a specific people. And I think they are the ones who actually do destroy the city and the sanctuary through their rebellion, and I think that's what caused the judgment. But I mean, that's language argument. I can see how someone might say that's a weaker argument, maybe. But it's just when in the text, it's normally associated with Jews. Nagid's normally associated with a godly appointed leader. We also see that the 490 years, when you just laid out from that decree to 34 AD, oh, everything looks like it fits. So why start fighting this even more? That's where I'm trying to see like, what are people seeing in this where it's like, no, it's got to be the Antichrist. Well, even when you read the prophecy, there's nothing about the Antichrist in verse 24. What needs to be fulfilled by the Antichrist in verse 24? I don't see it. And then they want to talk about a third temple, right? Think about this. How many temples do we see getting built in this prophecy? I see only one temple, right? Where do you see another temple getting built? I see one temple. Where's another temple that gets built? That way you got your third temple in verse 27, right? We don't see it. Why is it that it talks about the building of this of a temple, of one temple, but we don't see the building of the third temple, right? That all these dispensationalists are looking for. And it's like, why even teach dispensationalism? Because it all hangs on your messed up interpretation of this. Why do people even push dispensationalism if they can't even explain this? And then you think these people are getting anything else right? I mean, look at the scripture twisting you got to do. And that's my challenge for people. It's like any futurist can come on my show right now. The link is clicked up. The link is up at the top. You can click it. You can walk me through. I'll just sit here and just let you walk me through why you came to your interpretation as you're reading Daniel 9. Like, why did you start? At what point did you start going, this has definitely got to be about future Antichrist? Because when I did this myself, I did not know hardly anything, right? I was told that this was about an Antichrist, but I never taught it in my entire life. And then about maybe 7 years ago, I was like, oh, I've run across a Geneva Bible. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. At the bottom, the footnotes say this is about Jesus in verse 27, and that he's the one who calls it. I was like, man, that's quite different than everything everyone teaches me. Then I start going online and I start reading all these old books on Google Books, right? And I start doing searches. And I start searching a lot of different Protestant books written around the late 1500s, 1600s, and 1700s. And they're all saying that the Jesuits are the ones pushing this, talking about Bellarmine. Is it Manuel de Lacunza? Can't remember if Manuel de Lacunza is the one that came up with the preterism, or if he came up, or if he was the one pushing the preterism or futurism. I think he was the one pushing futurism. And I think it's Florentine is another one, and Ribera. Those that you had these four Jesuits pushing this futurism, trying to say, oh no, the Antichrist is future. It's not the Catholic Church. Because a lot of the Protestants at the time are reading Revelation 13 and saying that's about the second beast is the Roman Church, the papacy. And so in order to deflect from that, or, make, I guess, cause people to look elsewhere for the Antichrist, they start popularizing this Daniel 70th week being future because some people taught it back then. But why were people teaching it back then? When I start looking at this, it looks like they were kind of influenced by Jews that rejected the Messiah. And I don't think we should get our theology from people who reject the Messiah. Well, to me, it kind of looks like they were sort of influenced by that. So, but for the most part, most of the Protestants up until about 1800 taught that Daniel's 70th week was fulfilled by Jesus. And then in the 1800s, you start seeing dispensationalism start to get popular, and this notion of Daniel's 70th week get popular, being thrown into the future, being about a future Antichrist, signing some 7-year treaty and breaking in the middle. But the language in Daniel 27 doesn't allow for that. I don't see one part of it that would make you where Antichrist gets pointed to. Not when Nagid is a godly appointed leader, and Am is normally associated with the Jewish people. And then you just look at the history, and all the history fits. I actually go deeper into this in my book, and I cannot really remember everything off the top of my head in the book. But I'm going to still scroll down a little bit more, and he's still, if I go down, this is still that word beret, that word for covenant. I mean, this is Joshua 9:16 maybe. And it came to pass at the end of 3 days, after they had made with them a covenant, that they heard the neighbors that they were near to them and dwelt. But I still don't see nothing that says this is I don't know. I still don't see if there's anything like where you can use that word beret to mean some kind of treaty by an Antichrist. Because this all looks like God, like, you know what? I'm going to ask the AI. We'll do it this way, because let me log in. I don't know why that's doing that. Let me do it this way. Okay. In Hebrew, can beret be used as a you know what, I'll use a microphone, that'd be better. In Hebrew, can the Hebrew word beret be used for a covenant with the Antichrist? ? I wonder this because when I'm reading Daniel 9:27, many people try to claim that word covenant, beret, can be used to be for a covenant the Antichrist makes with people, or a treaty people make with the Antichrist makes with people. Is that even possible? So I'll just have the AI read this. See, even this is telling me, though, if you look at here on the screen, the Hebrew word beret always means covenant, but not just any agreement. It's a sacred, solemn, binding agreement, usually between God and man, or between people in a religious or deeply binding context. It's used over 280 times in the Bible, never used to describe a mere political treaty between pagan kings or enemies without a sacred or religious aspect, consistently associated with God's covenant with Noah, the Abrahamic covenant, Genesis 15:17, the Mosaic covenant, Exodus 24, the Davidic covenant, 2 Samuel 7, Psalm 89, the New Covenant, Jeremiah 31:31. What beret is not? Beret is not the word you'd expect if Daniel meant something like a political treaty, military alliance, or peace accord, as people claim about the Antichrist. Hebrew has other words for political or military alliances. Haver, companion ally. Shalom, peace, usually used in diplomatic context. Covenant of peace, a religiously grounded phrase. See Ezekiel 34:25, Numbers 25:12. Shazak Yad, strong hand used in political conquest language, or phrases like cut a treaty are still covenant language and not casual diplomacy. So for a purely secular treaty, the Hebrew word uses a different phrasing, not beret on its own. And why this matters for Daniel 9:27. The phrase, and he shall confirm / strengthen a covenant with many for 1 week. Key observations: the use of beret suggests a sacred or divine covenant, not just a unstyle, not just a UN style peace deal. The verb higber means make strong, not cause to prevail or confirm, not initiate or create. So that's another key thing here. He's not creating a covenant either, because there's this word where it says he shall confirm, strengthen. That's that word higber right here, and that would be right here. This what they usually say for confirm. But a lot of people make it sound like the Antichrist is going to create a treaty, right? No, 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 no. All you got to do is you guys got to try really hard to not understand the Hebrew and just overlook it on purpose, because you guys make these videos, especially people like what's his name, Robert Breaker, and all these other people, and they got millions of people watching their videos, and they're just lying to people, and this is why it upsets me. And there's no reason to do it, no reason to waste people's time. See, what I'm saying is you guys are wasting people's times. I try to be really nice about this. Trust me, I have left messages like, hey, I'd like to discuss this stuff with you guys. And a lot of these people, they'll start, deleting me off their thing, blocking me, making sure I can never leave another comment. Because they're like, oh, we got to protect our flock. Well, you're not protecting them when you're being this dishonest. And they're purposely being dishonest because there's just no reason to come to these conclusions. What it is you read a bunch of commentaries, you can't even read the Bible yourself, and then you say, oh, this sounds good to me, because you didn't get this from studying the text and come to this conclusion and go, oh, this is the only thing that makes sense. You didn't even bother reading like someone's interpretation like mine, or studying it, or thinking about it. And you just keep coming up with all these excuses to keep trying to twist the Bible to make it mean what you want it to mean. But when you look at the simple words like confirm, strengthen, how did you get create a covenant? No. Can't be create, because that's not the right word that the Hebrews would use. Higber means make strong, cause to prevail, or confirm, not initiate or create anew, right? So this is not, I'm creating a new covenant. No. You're making strong a covenant. See, God already had a covenant with his people. Now he's just making it even stronger with the blood of Christ. That's what's happening. That's why. And when you talk about a new covenant in the New Testament, it's just talking about taking this old agreement that he had with Abraham and everybody else all the way back to Adam, and he's taking this covenant and he's just strengthening it with the blood of Christ. That's why you have all this extra security with Christ, right? That you didn't have with the blood of bulls and goats and all that. So the verb higber means make strong, cause to prevail, confirm, not initiate or create. This implies that the new covenant already exists. This implies that the covenant already exists and is now being reinforced or fulfilled. So the subject he fits more naturally as the Messiah Jesus continuing or confirming God's covenant with Israel, rather than a future Antichrist introducing a new treaty. So, and then I guess we got some supporting scholarly quotes from Jeffrey Harper, Bible scholar in Hebrew semantics, the term Berit does not describe secular agreements, but is reserved for binding relationships, often mediated by God or involving divine stipulations. Theological workbook of the Old Testament. Nowhere is Berit used to describe a casual or purely diplomatic alliance. So the Kel and the Licht, I can't even pronounce that. I'm not even going to try. Some German looking name, probably. The Kel commentary on Daniel 9:27. The Hebrew covenant, the covenant here is not a new political covenant, but the holy covenant established by God and confirmed by the Messiah. So, see, it's real simple. The Hebrew does not allow for your crazy futurist dispensational interpretation. So, and part of the reason why I'm making this video is the other day I'm listening to Layman's Seminary, and again, I said, hey, I would like to debate either you or the guy who you're doing a video with, because they're talking about dispensationalism, and they go on doing a video review of this guy called Toronto Bible Study. And I'm sitting there listening to this, and it's like, in part of the video, they're like, hey, this guy, Toronto Bible Study, needs to listen to our 11 video series. It's like, no, 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 no. You guys, if you guys just debate me on this and can even show a coherent, um, substantiated reasoning for believing what you believe, then maybe someone should watch your 11 video series on dispensationalism. But why even start to go there when almost all of classical dispensationalism is built on the ideal of this prophecy being about an antichrist? But you guys can't even defend it, and you guys want to run from even having a conversation about it. Okay, so you say in Isaiah, covenant of death. I'll have to ask the AI, is Berit used for covenant of death? And oops. Okay, so Isaiah 28, 15, 18 does use the Hebrew word for Berit, and this is an important exception that is often misunderstood. Let's take a closer look. So, because you have said we have made a covenant with death, and with Sheol we have an agreement. So it's actually Karatnu Berit, we have cut a covenant with death. Your covenant with death will be annulled. So that's 28:18. So does this prove Berit can be used for an Antichrist treaty? No, not really. And here's why this doesn't weaken your argument, but actually strengthens it when understood in context. This is sarcastic prophetic mockery. Sort of like how they use Nagid in Ezekiel 28, I believe. This is sarcastic prophetic mockery. Isaiah 28 is mocking Israel's leaders for making a false deceptive alliance, thinking it will save them from death or destruction. God is calling out their spiritual adultery and misplaced trust in worldly powers like Egypt or Assyria. The phrase covenant with death is not a legitimate covenant. It's sarcastic, highlighting their rebellion against God by trusting human powers instead of him. It's like saying you think you've made a deal with death itself to avoid judgment. That covenant is worthless. Still a counterfeit of a sacred concept. The reason Isaiah uses the word Berit here is precisely because it's meant to be a twisted parody of God's true covenant. The leaders have taken the sacred concept of a covenant and corrupted it by making it a mock covenant. So even here, Berit keeps its sacred tone, and that's the very reason it's so effective, because the people have perverted something holy by making a fake covenant with evil. Context proves it's not a neutral treaty. If Berit could be used to mean a political deal or a treaty, the sarcastic sting would be lost. But the reason this verse shocks is because Berit isn't used for just any agreement. It's supposed to be a covenant with God, and now it's being applied to death and Sheol as if they are divine powers. This is rhetorical irony, not a generic use of Berit. Um, So, final verdict. Yes, Berit is used in Isaiah 28 for a covenant with death. That does not make it a normal political treaty. It's God mocking a blasphemous parody of his own covenant. That's actually further proof that Berit's not a neutral word for a secular alliance. It retains its sacred gravity even when corrupted. So, no, Daniel 9:27 still cannot support the idea of an Antichrist peace treaty. Unless someone wants to claim the Antichrist is making a mock sacred covenant and the entire verse is intended to be interpreted sarcastically, which dispensationalists don't argue. So they never use that argument in the first place. So now they might, because now I'm bringing it to their attention, but show me prior to this video where they've ever used that argument. They haven't. So, I'm pointing out something that they're just ignoring. So, YouTube channel says, what does the end of the world look like to you? I'd love to hear it. Yeah, you know what? I'm got to figure that out myself and sort through all that because, I grew up because like just 4 years ago, I still would have thought that in Revelation, the 1,260 days could be interpreted as years, right? And so I was called into doing some of that because some of the people that influenced me to a correct interpretation of Daniel 9 were also using this day for a year principle, and it sounded good because I'm like, okay, look at these dates match up. But when I'm looking at it, I'm like, even though 606 AD to 1844 matches up to 1,260 years, and we see some and we see some event that happens, um, or 1865. I think it might be 1865 is when the or 1866. I'm sorry, 1866 is when the Rome lost all of its papal states. And even though that, oh wow, look, you can match it up, to 606 AD when Pope Boniface accepted the title of Universal Bishop, and prior to that, Saint Gregory, who the Catholic or who the Roman Church recognizes as a saint, said the first person to accept such a title will be the precursor to the Antichrist, and we see Pope Boniface III accepting that in 606 A.D. And so a lot of historicists, even back in the 1800s and back in the 17 and 1600s, so this is 200 years before you even see the papal states. You see the Vatican losing all of its papal states. They had already said, "Hey, we expect something significant to happen, possibly happen." They weren't like saying this is definitely how you interpret the prophecy, but they're saying if this is years, then you should see something happen in 1866. Well, even though these people interpreted the prophecy that way and we see something happening, that still doesn't exactly mean that that's actually the way you should view it. But it gets tough, when people go, oh well, they said it though even 200 years before it happened. They came up with this possible interpretation and now we watch it happen. But me personally, I cannot find where you should interpret days for years like that. There's no precedent for it. I'm still trying to look for it. So I'm going back and trying to slowly go through Revelation, but I'm trying to finish this Daniel 9 book first because it's kind of important to first understand Daniel 9 properly. Because if you look at everyone else who's trying to tell you about the end times, what do they always do? These dispensationalists will tie it to Daniel 9 and say, oh, this thing in Revelation with 3.5 years, this also ties back into Daniel 9. And it's like, well, no, this is not no 7-year tribulation. So it's like, I think it's real important to straighten out Daniel 9 first and be on a rock solid understanding that no, there's no possible way you can interpret this any other way. You don't even need to do day for years to do this prophecy. It's already built into it. And part of the reason why I'm so strong on this is because if I present this to a Jew, I want to be able to use this to show that, hey, your own prophecy leads us to believe Jesus is the Messiah. You're not believing your own religion. And I said something real offensive to to a Jew, because I go, I think you're rejecting your own scripture, and I don't even consider you a Jew because you're rejecting your own religion. I think I'm more of a Jew than you are, and but they didn't really respond anything back to me. I'm still waiting for it. And I know that sounds kind of offensive to people, but if there was someone that was claiming to be a Christian, and they're like, well, I don't really believe Jesus died on a cross, and I don't really believe, Jesus said this thing or did this thing. I don't even believe Jesus turned water into wine. Well, you would start to even question whether they're a Christian, right? Because they're not even believing the scriptures. So, or if they deny Jesus was resurrected, you wouldn't call them a Christian. So why? But just because they're carrying around the scriptures and say, well, I believe the scriptures, why am I going to think they're a Christian when they're denying the actual words in the scripture? So same thing for the Jews. I don't call them a Jew if they're rejecting their own scripture. It's you make that argument for me. How can you be a Jew but you're denying your own scripture? How are you more of a Jew than me when I believe your religion and you don't even believe your own religion? So what I'm trying to do is use this prophecy, because if you notice, the Jews, when they try to interpret Daniel 9, they'll do just as equally wacky stuff as a dispensationalist. And it's like, well, no, you got to do some serious twisting to come up with your interpretations too. And that's not what the text actually says. And I can sit there with a Jew who doesn't believe the scriptures, but you can't deny. I need you to understand. We both know the same calendar. This is actually a lot easier to go through with a Jew that doesn't believe than a dispensationalist, because the Jew will not come up with another calendar, so I don't have to worry about arguing that. I'm just like, okay, we both know they use a lunar solar calendar. We're adding these dates up. We see that there was definitely something that happened in around 30 AD. Now, even if you deny this guy's Messiah, it's kind of weird that we also see this recorded text saying that you're gonna have tribulation, and even in this text it says that you're that the people will destroy the city and the. Hold on, let me make sure I don't want to do this off the top of my head. But after 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Well, we see the city and the sanctuary getting destroyed shortly right after this prophecy is supposed to be fulfilled. And just so happens that this religion of Christianity just comes out of the blue about Jesus the Messiah. Like, that just pops up right on this timeline. And you're going to sit here and deny Jesus is the Messiah when he pops up right on this timeline. But see, if someone else, like a dispensationalist, can't use this prophecy with the Jew, because the Jew would be like, well, we never use a 360-day calendar. Show me that. Dispensationalists, imagine a dispensationalist trying to argue, oh, no, you really did. Make that argument with a Jew. I would love to see that. That's why I said, come on my show. I just want to see how you would argue with like a non-believing Jew about this prophecy. It was fulfilled by Jesus. And with your little dispensational view, I'd love, because make it make sense to me like you would try to make it make sense to a Jew. You explain to them how, oh no, I know you guys really had a 360-day calendar, not no lunar solar calendar. Make that argument. See, that's how ridiculous this is. And these people are causing a division needlessly with their stupid dispensational nonsense built on a false interpretation of this that no one can even come up here and explain to me. Yes, Steph, and you're absolutely right. The Jewish leaders must have known the date of Jesus' arrival. Any Jew that just reads this prophecy with any sensibility, you're on a lunar solar calendar. Hey, Steph, you're on. The Jews know they're on a lunar solar calendar. They know this better than any dispensationalist, and they should be able to read this and go, "Oh, hey, something happened in 34 AD, and oh, look at this. The city shall be destroyed, right? And the sanctuary, and that's what happened." And then we have like this quote. Even if they want to reject the New Testament, there's still like this quote from Jesus saying that that's going to happen in this generation. Well, they know a generation's about 40 years, right? And for and so sometime between 30 AD and 70 AD, do we see the temple and the sanctuary getting destroyed? I mean, it's just really weird that it just happens to get destroyed shortly after this guy or this religion pops up. I mean, if you want to try to say Jesus didn't even exist, it's really weird how a lot of people claim he existed and didn't claim he existed until right at that moment. And then we also got this quote, whether you want to believe the New Testament or not, the sanctuary is destroyed within 40-year period. So to me, I can sit here and I feel like I can use this prophecy to bring a Jew to Christ when you properly know it and understand it. So, but I want the futurist to explain this. How would you explain this to a Jew? Because I know a lot about the Jewish culture, and I'm just going to question you like a Jew would question you. And you know what? They're going to fumble around, but then what they'll do is most of them, they don't even want to come up on here and explain this. They just want to say, I'm wrong. And then they'll go back to making videos where they're still teaching people this nonsense. And I'm willing to give up what I believe. I just want to hear a sensible explanation, a sensible alternative to what looks like to me a very reasonable alternative. But hey, Steph, what's up? Steph, you can.
Hey,
Hey,
Chris.
Chris. Hey. I'm kind of done, man. This was just kind of like a little rant.
Dispensationalism.
Well, I decided to start coming after dispensationalists a little bit harder because I'm reading this more and I'm like, yeah, the Hebrew just won't allow it.
Right. But like you said, imagine a world without dispensationalism, how much we could edify each other with just like you were saying, with the, explaining that to the Jews who don't believe that Messiah, that Jesus was the Messiah.
Right. I mean, if we all taught this, like no dispensationalism, we all taught this thing the same way to them, using their calendar correctly, and just taught it the same way I just explained it the past 30 minutes. It's like I would, a Jew would have a lot of would be struggling. It's like what.
Yeah.
Because when you read all their different interpretations, they make just as much sense as dispensationalism.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what dispensationalists are doing are really keeping the blinders on.
Right. I feel like they actually hate the Jews because they're teaching it like that.
It's like they really are hindering them. I mean, I was thinking about that a few days ago. Like, imagine what it would be like if we didn't have dispensationalism, and just how all Scripture could just be laid out just perfectly, just like how it was prophesied with Isaiah, Ezekiel, Zechariah, how it all just adds up.
Yeah, and one thing I always think is like kind of like the hypocrisy about them claiming they love the Jews, but yet if you were to present this nonsense to them, it must sound like you're just making things up because none of this is in their own religion. Like this 360-day calendar, that's not in their religion. The way you interpret the words of this, that's not in their religion.
Well, it was like 2019 when I finally was reading and just understanding. I mean, I grew up like thinking of the dispensationalism hermeneutics too, interpreting the Bible. So it was like 2019, 2020 when I
when
started realizing that there was another view to all of
all
this.
of this.
And
And
with
with
dispensationalism,
dispensationalism,
anything
anything
related to
related to
dispensationalism
dispensationalism
is
is
dependent on
dependent
this
on this
one
one
verse,
verse,
this
this
one
one
word
word
actually
actually
after
after
in the
in the
whole
whole
entire
entire
Bible,
Bible
after
after
three
the
62
62
weeks.
weeks.
Like
Like that's
that
that
one
one
verse
verse
is
is
what
what
dispensationalism is
dispensationalism is
holding
holding
everybody
everybody
back.
back. Yeah, that's
And
one
and and
thing.
and, 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 and,
Oh, go ahead.
this is
This is
another
another
thing. When
thing.
I
When
was,
I was,
would go
would
to
go to
church and
church and
believe in
believe
all
in
these
all these
dispensationalist
dispensationalist
pastors,
pastors,
they
they
couldn't
couldn't
even
even
explain
explain
where the
where the
77s
77s
came
came
from
from
in the
in the
beginning.
beginning.
Like,
Like
you
you
ask
ask
any
any
pastor, they
pastor,
don't
they
even
don't
talk
even talk
about it.
about
Like,
it. Like
where did
where
the
did the
77s
77s
come
come
from?
from? I have some
What
people saying
year
you got
was
a
the?
terrible echo. Hold, hold.
Oh, am
Oh,
I?
am I? Let me check the mic.
Well,
Well, oh my gosh, yeah, you know what? From on my side, I can't hear an echo, but I guess on their side, because I've just now opened up the video and played it on my phone, and I can hear echoing. So I don't know if you got
oh, okay.
two,
Let
if
me
you have like another stream, like if you have the YouTube open and you have your thing open, because normally
no.
that's what causes it.
Let me, can you hear
Can
me
you hear
now?
me now? Oh yeah, I
Is
can
it
hear
still
you.
echoing?
Echoing. We'll
Oh, is
see.
it
We'll
echoing
talk.
still?
To me, it sounded a little bit clearer because I'm not hearing like some of this because I was hearing like a little bit of popping, but now I'm not even hearing that.
Oh
Oh
man.
man. Yeah,
Well,
you're
I may have
less
to
muffled
come back.
now, so we'll see if they say you have an echo still.
Okay.
Okay.
Um,
Um,
but what I
but
was
what I was
saying is
saying is
when you
when you
talk to,
talk to
the
the
pastors or
pastors or the
it's
oh,
still
it's still
echoing.
echoing.
I really
I
want to
really
get
want to
this
get this
out
out
because
because
none of the
none of the
dispensationalist
dispensationalist
pastors in
pastors
my
in my
churches that
churches
I
that
went
I went
to
to
can
can
even
even
explain where the
explain where the
77s came
77s
from
came
in the
from in
first
the first
place.
place.
That's
That's
critical for
critical
us
for
to
us
be
to
able
be able
to
to
witness
witness
to
to
anybody being
anybody being
recruited.
recruited. Yeah, you still have an echo. I had to play the video. I'm not sure if you can like turn off echo cancellation on your mic. Yeah, I don't have no way of doing it on my end. But anyway, sorry about that, folks. Um, but I'll go on one
I'm
thing.
gonna
I'm
come
gonna
back.
come back.
I'll
I'll
leave and
leave
come
and
back
come
in.
back in. All right, we'll try that.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, everyone, thanks for letting me know that. But one thing she brought up was Daniel 26, where it says, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. I mean, that's another thing they kind of pay no attention to, is that right after the 483 years, well, I won't say right after, but it says after the 483 years, 483 years, Messiah will be cut off, but not for himself. So I mean, so he's not being cut off in any part of that 483 years. So now you have him being cut off in the middle of the gap. Then so it's almost like his being crucified had no meaning for any of the verse 24. Because you're saying that, yeah, he gets cut off after the 7 and 62 weeks, which is 483 years. So if he's cut off afterwards, he's not part of the prophecy, because you're throwing the 70th week into the future. But you're saying he's also not part of the first 483 years. So he's cut off somewhere in the middle of the prophecy. So his crucifixion has nothing to do with any of this in verse 24. So you're saying that his crucifixion has nothing to do with making an end to sins. It makes no reconciliation for iniquity. It doesn't bring in everlasting righteousness. Nothing about anointing the most holy. Absolutely nothing. You know, um, and like, to me, that's crazy. Because if he's crucified and he's not part of the 70 weeks, which is what dispensationalists say, is Jesus' crucifixion is not part of the 70 weeks, because they got him dying in that gap, because it says after the 62 weeks, which is the 62 weeks. But plus, we already know the 7 weeks already occurred. So that's 483 years. After those 483 years, he's crucified. That means it's in the middle of that gap. And that means it just wouldn't be, that means he's not part of the 70 weeks that are determined to accomplish these things. Because you wouldn't count anything that happens in the gap as being part of the 70 weeks, right? So that's kind of a point I sometimes forget to bring up. I do bring it up in my book. Yeah, I was really hoping that I could get like a dispensationalist to come up on here, or someone who believes Daniel's 70th week is future, and just walk me through and explain like how you would talk about this to a Jew and why you're reading it and coming up with your interpretation. You know, um, like you were explaining this to a non-believer. Or just another believer. It's like, why when you read this, where you're like, oh, but because me personally, I would just take and write down the 4 decree dates that people normally argue for. I'd add 490 years to it, see where it lands. You know what? I might. Man, I thought I had this somewhere up on here. It's real frustrating that I don't know what I did with that chart I had. Still looking for it. Oh, I know what I did. I was probably looking up under the wrong file. Yep, found it. See, that's what I would do if I was researching this. You know, I want to probably make this a little bit easier to see if I did it. Open this up with a different program. See, that's all I would do if I was a dispensationalist. I would, or not a dispensationalist, just looking at this prophecy, write down all these decree dates that people ever said it possibly was, add to it 490 years. Oh, no, it can't be Cyrus, 48 BC. Darius, 30 BC. Nope. Jesus was crucified around 30 AD. Artaxerxes, 457. BC, you add 490 years, you get 34 AD. Final 7 years, 27 to 34 AD. Oh, hey, that looks like it might be good. Artaxerxes, 444 BC date, add 490 years, you get 47 AD. Or add, since you want to save that final 7 years, 483 years, you get 40 AD. Oh, well, can't be it. So then I would start to just go through there, and it's like, at what point when they were going through this and analyzing this, were they saying, oh man, that just doesn't make sense with the text? At what point were you doing that? That's all I want to understand. Like, why do you go, oh wow, this just doesn't make any sense to me? Why were you doing that? And all I can think of is that your Bible teacher, or your prophecy teacher, or whatever, you're just like, you just believe everything they say, and I don't think you yourself actually thought about this too much. Because every time I ask questions, it's like, it's almost like you guys never thought about it. And then this one, it's like, well, now okay. How did you get this? Oh, well, what we did was we took 483 years, we times it by 360, we got 1,173,880 days, and then we divided that by 365.25, and we got 476 years. Then we added that on 444 BC, and we got 33 AD. Or they added to 445 BC and get 33 AD. One of those two dates. I can't remember off the top of my head. But and they're like, that's how we did it. But it's like, show me in the Bible where this occurs. Why would you even, like, what in the world made you think of doing this? When you're reading the Old Testament, why did you think of doing it this way? So, okay, Stephanie, you're fixing the settings. Cool. So, dispensationalists can't explain why the 70 years of captivity in the first place, and don't know Daniel 9 is related to sabbatical year counting. Yeah, that's another thing about it, is like, I've never had a dispensationalist. I mean, show me the video where a dispensationalist even cared about telling you about the date of this, of the beginning of this prophecy, where they read through this and they go, the first year of Darius, son of Ahasuerus, the seed of the Medes, which was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. First year, I, Daniel, understood by the books of the number of years where the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. A lot of them don't even know where that even starts or stops at, or has no idea. And I have a video where I do go over that. And me personally, I'm wondering if there might be two different 70-year prophecies. Because it looks like to me there's like this one where it's like the king of Babylon will reign over the nations for 70 years. So I just think it's like a general reigning over the nations from like 609 to 539 BC, and that's when Cyrus ends the reign of the king of Babylon, right? And you get 70 years that way. Also, you could say that the temple gets rebuilt in 486 BC, and it got destroyed in 486 BC. I mean 586 BC, and it gets rebuilt in 480. Hold on, not 486, 516 BC. Sorry. So we know the temple gets rebuilt in 516 BC, and it was destroyed in 586 BC. Well, there's 70 years there too. So some people say there's two different 70-year prophecies, because they still weren't. The king of Babylon wasn't reigning over them between 539 and 516. So but yeah, we also see another 70-year period there. So there is quite possible that there's two different 70-year prophecies being talked about in the book of Jeremiah. So, and I did go over that in a video. And some people want to argue with that 609 date, but in that video I showed you that the Egyptians, when they made that one king, I can't think of his name, but they made him king over the Jews. Jews didn't have autonomy over their own nation at that time. So that's kind of why I started there, because I think that it just happens to be like, what is it, October, that happens in October of 609 BC. So now we see we see Cyrus overthrowing Babylon and releasing the Jews from the Babylon captivity in 539 BC, and it happens to be October also. So you have October to October. So that's kind of why I also bring up that date. But you never see them talk about these dates or the beginning part of this prophecy. And because this was years, I think it's natural that when you get down to verse 24, when it says 70 weeks, it's talking about weeks of years. Since the other one was 70 years, this Shavua would be weeks of years. Since the other one was 70, just single years, now it's saying 70 weeks of years. And so it's just kind of natural to just assume that means years. And also the fact, like I said, I'll show this real quick. Daniel 10. Maybe is it? I think it's verse 4. Interlinear. Nope, it's verse 3. Now, remember, this is Hebrew, so we're going to read from right to left. Food pleasant, no, I ate, and meat or wine, no, came into my mouth, and at all, nor did I anoint myself, till was fulfilled 3 Shabum. So that's the same word, Shabuim, same word we see in Daniel chapter 9. And this says whole, right? Well, this is actually the Hebrew word yamim, which means days. So as you can see, yom singular, when it's yamim, yamim, means days, plural of days, right? So when it's supposed to be a week of days, it specifically tells you, at least Daniel tells you. So that's another reason why I think it's okay to say, oh, this is definitely talking about years and we don't need to do a year for a day conversion or none of that nonsense, right? You don't need to do year for a day. You already know it's years just by the context of it, the whole prophecy, and the fact that Daniel will specifically tell you when it's a week of a shavua of days, or shavuim of days. So same thing there. And I guess I can go over some of the stuff I from my last video about Polycarp and the Passover, because some of the things I was looking at, and this is just some stuff I copied down from when I was having a conversation with the AI after that video was over. Let's see if I can. So I think there's some couple of interesting things when I went over this. Oh yeah, I did go over the fasting part in that video. And went over the problem. Okay, yeah, okay, here's my additional show after notes. Or after show notes. So the claim that Ignatius of Antioch was a direct disciple of the Apostle John is a long-standing tradition in early Christian history. So one of the people I was reading from was this guy named, someone, I was reading from someone's article, I can't even think of his name. But one of the things he did was he put, when he was reading quotes from Ignatius of Antioch, in the parentheses he put disciple of John. So I was like, okay, well, maybe this would be a strong argument against what I'm saying. You know, if you can have other so-called people that might have knew the apostles teaching something different. But I started finding problems with even this claim that he's a disciple of John. And I think that's just a lie that was later taught. So the claim that Ignatius of Antioch was a direct disciple of the Apostle John is a long-standing tradition in the early Christian history. I would say in early Roman church history. However, the historical evidence supporting this claim is mixed, and scholars have debated its validity. Several early Christian writers and traditions assert that Ignatius had direct connection to the Apostle John. As Theodoret, or Theodore, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, of Cyrus, 5th century, claimed that St. Peter appointed Ignatius as the bishop of Antioch, suggesting apostolic succession. I'll get to you in a second. I'm just going to finish reading this stuff. St. John Chrysostom emphasized the honor of Ignatius receiving episcopal consecration at the hands of the apostles themselves. So this is people writing way after the fact, hundreds of years afterwards, claiming this. Some traditions even identify Ignatius as the child who Jesus took in his arms, as described in Mark 9:35. These accounts aim to establish Ignatius's authority and direct link to the apostles. Modern scholarship approaches these claims with caution. Ignatius's own writings do not mention a personal relationship with the Apostle John. Irenaeus, a student of Polycarp who was a disciple of John, does not explicitly state that Ignatius knew John. Some letters attributed to Ignatius suggest a connection to John are considered later forgeries and not authentic. So the one thing when I was looking at this is I saw no one who knew Ignatius personally claiming Ignatius actually knew any of the apostles. Like, with Irenaeus, we see Irenaeus, who actually lived at the same time of Polycarp, claims Polycarp actually knew John. And it seems like every single church writer acknowledges that, yes, Polycarp actually knew John. The funny thing is, we don't see the same thing. We see no contemporaries saying that Ignatius actually knew John. It's like later just asserted by Chrysostom and other people. Um, so this is basically saying what I just said. So Irenaeus knew Polycarp, and Polycarp was also not only instructed by apostles and conversed with many who had seen Christ, but was appointed by the apostles in Asia as a bishop of the church in Smyrna. I remember the events of that time more clearly than those of recent years, for the things which we learned in childhood grew up with the soul. So Irenaeus, we have him directly knowing him. But see, Ignatius and John, there's no eyewitness testimony. That's what I wanted to point out about some of these claims, which I I doubt. I think some of the things about Ignatius are forgeries, and I don't think he actually knew John, or these are just like made up stories added in added tradition. But we don't see a contemporary or a near contemporary source that actually claims that he actually knew the apostles. And also with Polycarp, we have an eyewitness that says he actually knows the apostles, and he also clearly preserved the practices of John and the other apostles. But we don't see the same with Ignatius. And I think a lot of this was just done to help substantiate the Roman Catholic Church's claim that they have some kind of apostolic authority in order to change things. But when Polycarp talked to Anicetus, why didn't Anicetus bring up, things like Ignatius and or any kind of proof? It doesn't seem like there's any proof ever brought up. It's just a claim. But we can see in the Bible Polycarp does actually keep what the apostles taught. We can actually see the practices Polycarp's doing in the Bible, and we can't see the ones that Ignatius is doing, or people are claiming Ignatius is doing and supporting in the Bible. And I kind of find the same thing with Barnabas, because people like to use Barnabas as a source for this, and he actually says some things that contradict the apostles themselves. So I don't think we can use Barnabas either. And I'll just bring up one claim, because there's one single thing here that I find very curious. Where is this at? I know it's out here somewhere. I know I got it written down here somewhere. Well, hey, Stephanie, you can go ahead and talk while I'm trying to look for this. If you're here. There is this one contradiction I just want to bring up about Ignatius. But I know he was one of the first ones to push this more monarchical episcopacy, episcopacy. one bishop rule, basically. Sorry, I have trouble pronouncing his words. I think he's one of the most earliest and vocal proponents, at least according to the writings which they claim is his, for Ignatius, but I'm still trying to look for that. But I mean, even that stuff that Ignatius is pushing about a one bishop rule, it contradicts Paul, because Paul is commending the Bereans for studying the scriptures, the old, which at the time all they had was the Old Testament, to see if what Paul is saying is true. And Paul's not saying, oh, you need to just believe the bishop, which is what the writings of Ignatius seem to be saying, is that we need to have a bishop, and you need to let the bishop rule over you. Oh yeah, here we go. Ignatius of Antioch in his writings around 110 AD, do nothing without the bishop. Where the bishop is, there let the multitude be, even as where Christ is, there is the Catholic Church. So that's Ignatius in the Epistle to the Smyrnians in chapter in book 8 or whatever. But see, we can see Paul saying, now the Bereans were more noble than those in Thessalonica, for they received the word with all readiness of mind and searched the scriptures daily to see whether those things were so. That's very different than the so-called quote from Ignatius of Antioch saying, do nothing without the bishop. Doesn't seem like Paul is saying that at all in Acts 17, verse 11. And then we just got a side-by-side comparison. Apostolic Christianity, Paul, truth is verified by scriptures. Leaders are tested by the word. Commends the Bereans for examination. Scripture is the final authority. Unity based on truth. Now, early institutions like Ignatius says truth is located in the bishop's authority. Leaders are followed without question. Demand submission to hierarchy. Office is treated as the final authority. Unity based on obedience to the church structure. See, I'm wondering if the same people that are involved in Rome just started pushing this and came up with forgeries, right? Because they also lied about that thing about Constantine given those papal lands. Well, I can't remember what that's called. Man, my mind is kind of escaping a lot of these details I need to recall right now. But I will finish with this. Isaiah 8:20. To the law and the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it's because there is no light in them. So the Bereans were doing exactly like what Isaiah 8:20 says. So there's one thing I want to really show by. Oh, okay, yeah, it's this one right here. This quote by Barnabas, Barnabas 10. So then he spoke to them in parables, but they, on account of the lust of their flesh, received them as if he meant it literally. Because Barnabas is arguing that you're not supposed to follow, that Jews were never supposed to take these dietary commands literally. He said they only took them literally because, on the account of their flesh, they received them as if God meant them literally. See, he's teaching total opposite of the Bible. So these two guys that they try to use to support their Sunday nonsense or Easter Sunday nonsense and all this, and well, I wouldn't use Barnabas and I wouldn't use Ignatius either, because both of these guys are making clear. It to me, it looks like forgeries. It looks like stuff that's not even really scripture. Because prove this in the Bible for me. Because that's what Barnabas is saying. So then God spoke to them in parables, but they, on account of the lust of their flesh, so they, the Jews, so then God spoke to the Jews in parables, but the Jews, on account of the lust of their flesh, received them as if he meant it literally. I think that's what he's referring to when he's talking about the dietary laws. So, yeah, so I mean that's basically what he's saying, is that it makes the case that the literal observance of dietary laws were never God's true intention. And I think that's laying the groundwork for supersessionism. Church replaces Israel. Anti-Judaism. Jews are always misunderstood God's will. And eventually Gnostic style allegorizing, where scripture no longer means what it says. So those would be like the final points of my video that I made yesterday. So anyway, Steph, you want to say anything?
Well, I
Well,
hope.
I hope.
No, can you still echoing?
I can hear you.
Well, good.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
I just
I
talked
just
to
it
my
my
like
Oh, wow, your mic is
so
kind of going in and out for some reason, though.
no, it
it
still
still
is.
is.
Hold on, let me make sure and keep talking.
So I
So
was
I was
saying I
saying
just
I just
got a
a
new
new
mic
mic
for
for
my
my
laptop,
laptop,
and
and
I'm trying
I'm
to
trying
get
to
the
get the
settings
settings
right. I
right. I
think it's
think it's
still
still
echoing.
echoing.
Yep, it's still echoing.
See.
You know, the only thing I can think of is
No,
if you have something open up in the background.
I
Uh,
don't.
don't.
I
I
made
made
sure,
sure,
and I have
and I
the
have the
echo
echo
like
like
cancellation
cancellation
selected.
selected.
Maybe hold on. Maybe it might be my. Let me make sure it's not my end.
You weren't echoing though
though.
I
when I was
am.
listening to you.
You.
No, you
No, you
weren't.
weren't.
Um.
Oh no,
What
what's
this
this
is
doing?
doing?
Okay. So let's try seeing if you talk now and make sure nothing's happening. It could have been my fault.
Maybe.
Um.
Um.
Well,
Well,
I was
I was
trying to
trying to
mess
mess
around with
around
the
with the
settings
settings
on my
on my
actual
actual
new
new
mic
mic
and the
and the
settings
settings
to
to
match it
match
up
it up
with
with
StreamYard,
StreamYard,
and I
and I
thought I
thought I
did
did
it,
it,
but it
but it
sounds like
sounds
I'm
like I'm
still
still
echoing.
echoing.
I
I
think.
think.
Okay, cause see, I know that StreamYard updated some things, and sometimes when they update things, they remove the check marks.
Okay, let
Okay,
me
let me
check.
check.
But I just now turned on my echo cancellation, and it still didn't fix anything on your end.
Oh, okay. Let
Okay,
me
let
see
me
if
see
I
if I
switch it
switch it
to
to
this
this
one
one
first.
Hey, Dad.
Hey,
What's
Liam.
up?
Hey, Liam. You want to say hi? You can.
Hi to who?
All these people out here. You gotta.
All these people?
Yeah.
Of course. Ooh, what's that new sweater?
That would be my shirt I made back in 2020.
Made back in 2020?
Yeah, during COVID.
Oh, yeah, but what happened to that shit, though?
I wonder what happened to it, too.
Yeah.
Mommy sometimes likes to hide my clothes.
Yeah.
They're political.
Okay. Hi, everyone. You know, I'm a son.
Yeah, you can keep talking, Liam. You can do my show for me.
And have you tried the new Minecraft soda?
Yeah, well, Liam, I don't have anyone else. Well, Stephanie's fixing her mic.
You know, I'm just.
Well, I don't know how much more I'm going to keep going on with this show because I'm just seeing if basically Stephanie's got her mic fixed. I've talked to Stephanie for a little bit and then I'll probably end the show. I was hoping some people would come on. I know I do shows kind of on short notice.
Yeah, this is the Minecraft soda.
Oh, you might have to put it up closer, Liam. There, now all the... Oops. I got...
It keeps disappearing.
Well, yeah, because Daddy doesn't want the whole background showing of my video. I don't think I can... if I kind of put my hand right there, then they can see the beautiful Minecraft soda.
This is actually from Minecraft. Could you open it?
Yeah.
And try it? Because...
Poppy. You want me to try it?
Yeah. It's the first time. So what do you
think? That's very good, man. It doesn't taste very sugary. So there, Poppy soda. Is that what it's called? Poppi?
I think we got the Minecraft movie soda.
And it's prebiotic soda.
Everybody loves the Minecraft movie.
No, you can keep it. I don't want to drink your whole soda.
Because they only love the Minecraft movie because they have making Jack Black toys. Like, why can't Steve be blocky in the Minecraft movie? Like he's Jack Black.
Well, Steph, you got your mic? Are you still working on your mic? I'm guessing probably.
I don't know if this is gonna work. This seems like I keep putting all this settings right. It's just not. I don't know. It must be something with StreamYard.
Oh, that's frustrating.
I don't know. I know. Gosh.
Yeah, I can still hear the echo.
I have everything shut down. Like I don't have.
And you have noise cancellation turned on, and or echo cancellation turned on. That's what I need to say.
Let me see if I'm in StreamYard twice.
Yeah, because I see nothing else I can personally do on my end. So sorry about that, folks.
It's only when I unmute. Yeah. It's like when I'm talking without it on mute, I'm not echoing. But as soon as I open my mic, it starts echoing. I don't know.
Yeah, there's as far as I know, there's absolutely nothing. Okay, here. Well, I'm gonna mute my mic just to make sure it's not on my end.
I don't think it is, but okay.
Well, now I know for sure. I listened back.
Yeah, it's not yours.
Oh,
man.
Yeah, that's really a shame, Steph. I don't want to put the audience through.
No, that's okay. I'm gonna head out. So maybe I'll try to do a test one day to see how I can get my new mic to connect.
All right, that sounds good. All right, I'm gonna let you go. There we go. Sorry about that, everyone. I don't think I got any other topics to touch. I mean, like I said, I was just putting this stream on so I could try to figure out why people were unsubscribing, and all I could think of is being upset because of what I said about dispensationalism, what I said about Passover recently, but I was basically attacking the Orthodox and Catholic Church and showing the absurdities of what they believe. And I didn't know it was going to offend Protestants. I would think that Protestants would be like, "Oh, I didn't realize I was being like a Catholic, so I'm going to quit." And this is a good argument against their church and their claims of apostolic authority. It shows how absurd they are. So, I mean, I thought I was doing like something good, and I guess I angered a lot of people. So that was the main point of me doing the stream, was opening up. Anyone could come on, even people who agree with me could come on the stream. And or if there's anyone else that's got anything against me, you can still come on right now and talk, because it's like, I'd really like to know. I'm trying to be as open and transparent as possible, but it seems like everyone who is getting angry doesn't even want to have a conversation, a discussion. They just want to get mad. They don't even leave a comment as to why they are unsubscribing. And I just want to make sure I gave people their chance to have some peace and let me know and offer their discussions. But yeah, I basically will stick to saying that I think a lot of you people are deceivers now. And maybe this video came on at a time when you couldn't join. It would be nice if in the future, if someone could make a video and at least respond, to what I have to say. Instead of just getting mad, make a video response. I'll play your video response. As you can see at the bottom of my screen, I do something most of you who get mad at me don't do. I let you tell other people you have a channel, you have a video. If I start saying, hey, I'm working on this video, sometimes you guys just flip out and go, oh my gosh, you're trying to promote your channel. Well, there's not a lot of this content on YouTube. I'm just letting people know about it. Just like if there was something you thought you were doing that was important, I don't mind you telling people, hey, I'm working on this project. It doesn't bother my show. It doesn't bother me. But apparently no one wants to have this conversation. They just want to keep doubling down and teaching the false things they teach. So that's the end of my show. I don't really know what more to say.